ladies. You have some vocab on the board. I think it's pretty straightforward. Sandy Island is Isla Arenosa in Spanish. If anyone's going to interpret into French, I have the term, which is Île de Sable, but I don't know if you need that. Civilization is a game. New Caledonia translates literally into Spanish. Cook, Captain Cook, pretty famous guy. Pumice stone, Piedra Pumice, as someone was saying already. Dougherty Island, Isla Dougherty, and Cape Horn is a mistranslation of Cabo Hornos. So there you go, fun fact. And I'll get started now. I would like to start my speech with a question about your childhood or maybe early youth. Did anyone here play a computer game called Civilization? No? Okay, then I will explain. It was one of my favorite computer games when I was a child. And the aim of the game was to build up a civilization. You had to explore the world. You could build, for example, you could build a port or a train station or a school, a library, a university, that kind of thing. You could establish trade relationships with other civilizations. You could go to war, which I hated, but you know, it was part of the game. You could also build the 7 wonders of the world, for example, the pyramids. It was very exciting. I really liked it. But my favorite part was at the start of your game, your screen was completely blank, or should I say black, rather. The whole map was black, and you had one little guy who had to go around exploring the world. And as the little guy moved, you would find what was hidden behind the darkness. So you would find mountains, lakes, the sea, resources like iron or spices, and you also came across the other civilizations. Well, why am I talking about this? Is this a nostalgic trip into my childhood back when I had time to play computer games all afternoon? No, it is a metaphor. For me, when the whole map was clear and I knew where every mountain and every lake and every town was, that was the end of the fun. My favorite part of the game was exploring that world. And once everything was explored, I just found it really boring. And often I just turned it off and started over. I think that on planet Earth, we're in a similar situation. Everything has been discovered already. So what can we do now for fun? Maybe we can start undiscovering things, unmapping what we have already mapped. It's a suggestion, and in this speech I will tell you about a specific case in which that happened. Something that had been discovered was undiscovered, and something that had been mapped was unmapped. I'm talking about Sandy Island. It is, or was, or would have been, perhaps, a little island in the Pacific Ocean, somewhere between Australia and New Caledonia, in which is actually French territorial waters. It was discovered in 1774, and it was undiscovered in 2012. Let me go through the history of this island, of Sandy Island. In 1774, Captain Cook was on one of his world voyages, and he saw the island. Perhaps he had been naming things all year long and he was already tired and, you know, lacking in imagination, and he said, well, this island has sand on it, so we'll just call it Sandy Island. I think that's a fair name. A century later, more or less, in 1887, the crew of a whaleboat that was sailing in the area also saw the island, and therefore the existence of Sandy Island was confirmed. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but for example in journalism, you're not allowed ethically to publish a piece of news until you have heard about this event from two separate sources. That means that the event has really happened and that it has been confirmed. So a similar thing happened with Sandy Island. Two separate ships on two separate voyages and a century apart saw it. So everyone assumed that it existed, it was there, and therefore it was put in the maps. However, over time, after these two sightings, other ships sailed in the area and other crews looked for Sandy Island, but no one could find it. It seemed like it wasn't there. So after many such events were reported, some maps marked Sandy Island as ED, which meant existence doubtful. It remained so for a very long time, until the 20th century, when some people decided that it was high time that we finally discovered whether Sandy Island existed or not. And so some studies were undertaken, there was some aerial exploration, and in the end, the French organization in charge of cartography and mapping deleted Sandy Island from all their maps. However, for a very long time, it still appeared on maps by the National Geographical Society or even Google Maps. Now, perhaps throughout my story you've been thinking that this was a very long time ago, but I'm telling you, Sandy Island was on Google Maps, so within our lifetime. Finally, in 2012, an Australian research vessel decided to solve the mystery once and for all. They went to the area with the explicit purpose of discovering whether Sandy Island was a real place or not. They did all their research and they concluded that there was no such thing as Sandy Island. And after that discovery, Sandy Island was removed from all maps. And you will not find it now unless you have an old map, I guess. What took so long? Well, as I said, it had been confirmed. More than one person had seen it, and it appeared in different maps from different authors. So no one had reasons to doubt that Sandy Island was a real place. How can we explain this? What happened? Was there really an island that perhaps sunk to the bottom of the sea? Or was it an invention? Maybe there was no island at all? Well, there are several theories about Sandy Island. One of them is that it could have been a false mark on a map. Now, what is a false mark? Imagine this. You are an explorer, a cartographer, and this is in the, for example, 16th or 17th century. You have been exploring Tenerife, for example, and you start drafting your map based on what you have seen and what you have done sailing in your ship. Now, you wouldn't want that map to be copied by anyone else and sold to people as if it was drafted by someone else. So you would put a false mark. For example, if I were drafting a map of this area of Madrid where we are right now, I could say that just outside this university campus there's a volcano, and I could put that on my map. And then if at a map shop I found a map with that volcano outside the campus, I would know that someone had copied my map and I could sue them, for example. Current map editors still use false marks on their maps, but now they're known as paper towns. Often they're false towns that never existed. Another possible explanation for Sandy Island was that there was actually something there when Captain Cook and the whale boat saw it. The most likely theory is that it was a floating mass of pumice stone, which was the consequence of a volcanic eruption a few miles away. Now, this theory actually could very well be true, because in the early 2000s that happened again. A volcano near Australia erupted, and it released a lot of pumice stone that was floating on the sea for a very long time, and it formed masses that perhaps could be confused with an island. So that's a theory. Interestingly enough, I hope you're not tired yet, Sandy Island is not the only phantom island. If you have time this afternoon, I invite you to visit the Wikipedia page on phantom islands, because there are several there, and many of the stories are very interesting. The most intriguing one, in my opinion, is that of Dougherty Island, which was seen not once, not twice, but 3 times. It was first detected in 1841 by the crew of a whaleboat that was sailing in the area. The second time, and they gave Dougherty Island its name after their captain, Captain Dougherty. Nice thing to do for your captain, I guess. The second time that Dougherty Island was detected was in 1860, and then it was seen a third time in 1886. The reports from the 3 sightings were quite similar. They all said that Dougherty Island was between 5 and 6 miles long. It was snowy on top and higher on one of the sides. And they also gave very similar coordinates as for the island's position. They said it was somewhere between Cape Horn and New Zealand. However, later in that same century, in the 19th century, some explorers were sailing again in the area between Cape Horn and New Zealand, and they didn't find Dougherty Island. They were looking for it, and it just wasn't there. So what happened? Do we have another false marking? Do we have another floating mass of pumice stone? 2 of the most likely theories regarding Dougherty Island was that it was either an iceberg that was floating in the area for a few years and then melted or drifted away somewhere else, or that it was just fog that for some reason the sailors mistook for an island, just fog. In any case, I find these stories very interesting and very peculiar. And, even though everything on this planet has been discovered, it remains to be seen what can we still undiscover. Thank you.